When we're studying Revelation, the big thing we need to remember is the big picture. If we don't keep an idea, if we try to get diving into one spot and use one verse to back up any doctrine, and it's not backed up anywhere else, then we're making mistakes. I told you about the video I watched, and so this guy was using basically 3 verses to try to nail something down, and calling people who don't believe like he does warped. And we have this whole Bible of things that say differently, but it isn't something you can just kind of rattle off and say. It's concepts that you're teaching. But like for instance, Matthew 24 says, "He that endureth unto the end shall be saved." It's not talking about salvation. It's talking about people who make it through the tribulation alive. And it's in context, Matthew 24. Matter of fact, tonight we're going to start covering some of the things that those people have to survive. The 7 trumpets are not fun. Matter of fact, the only thing worse than 7 trumpets were the 7 thunderings. But however, remember, the angel told John not to write down what the 7 thunderings were. But however, we're going to start chapter 8 tonight. Now remember, also, Revelation is written in a cyclical manner. When you get to Revelation chapter 6, it's pretty much the end. So how do we fix that? Do we look at everything and say that it's all symbolic? And I think calling everything in Revelation symbolic is an easy out. It's somewhat lazy. Just about everything in Revelation is found somewhere else in Scripture. And but when we talk about this here in being cyclical, we just finished the seal cycle. Remember, the seal cycle deals with the Antichrist, deals with first with the white horse coming in peace, and then the black horse talking about pestilence, and or is that the economy? I'm sorry. The economy, pestilence. Anyways, red horse war, the pale horse death, and hell followed after. And then there were the souls under the altar, those that had been martyred during the tribulation. And remember what their prayer was? The souls under the altar. Remember their prayer was, "How long, O Lord, until you avenge the death of your saints?" Which is going to be popping back up now in chapter 8. And so remember, once you get into the 7th seal, the 7th seal is the 7 trumpets. When they open it up, then that is the 7 trumpets. And so when we're talking about time frames and the seal cycle here, we have just finished the seal cycle. Remember the first 3.5 years, pretty grand. Antichrist is a good guy. And peace on earth, all sorts of neat stuff going on. Then in the second half, Satan enters the Antichrist. We're going to cover that in the next couple weeks. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But right now we're in the trumpet cycle, which in all actuality, probably the trumpet cycle's here towards the end and not really at the 3.5, but it's hard to tell. All of the seals had to do with the actions of the Antichrist and his group. Now when we get to the trumpets, it's going to now be the actions of God pulling his hand of protection and the judgments that will be coming. And it's going to get pretty rough here in a minute. And so let's go ahead and cover these. I think we might be done a couple minutes early tonight. Chapter 8 is kind of short. We can get into chapter 9 if you want, but we'll see where it ends here. All right. Verse 1. You ready?
Yes.
And when he had opened the 7th seal, remember the 7th seal contained 7 trumpets, and it's a continuation of chapter 6. Chapter 7 is parenthetical. And there was the silence in the heaven about the space of a half hour. We have guests tonight. Otherwise, I'd normally tell a joke here that this is the proof where there's none. I can't even say it. And so we'll be a little bit more careful on a Wednesday night. And you know who the first electrician was, right? Adam. He provided the parts for the first loudspeaker. Anyways. He laughed. All right, now we can tell the other joke. There's silence in heaven for a space about the half hour. Just proves that there's no women in heaven. Oh! No, just kidding. Nothing we love more than to hear ladies talk and sing and all that. And laugh. And peer at me like you're in trouble over their bifocals like Angela's, or reading glasses like Angela's just did. So for chapters, we've seen the choirs of heaven singing and praising God at every turn. Now they come to an abrupt stop. Imagine this. For the space of a half hour in heaven, their jaws are slack and they are staring, looking about what's to happen. That tells you how ugly things are about to be. But again, the 7 trumpets will not be as violent as the 7 thunders, but we don't know what they are. But it also won't be as violent as the 7 trials. Those vials, those are going to be even worse. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God. Now this is one of those places where it says the 7 angels as if we should know what it's talking about. This is the first mention of the 7 angels. So with that, I don't have a good answer of exactly who it is. But 7 angels are used to pour out God's wrath during the 7 vials, Revelation 15 through 16. And to them were given 7 trumpets. Now, trumpets to us... should I tell my other joke about trumpets? No, I won't tell that joke. And so, Numbers chapter 10, verses 1 through 9, gives 3 reasons for trumpets. Numbers chapter 10 says it's first for the gathering for a feast. And so, at the rapture, the trumpet shall sound. So that makes sense. It's also for the gathering for a war. So same trumpets, different purpose. And for the anointing of a king. And so at this point of Revelation, the king is coming soon. Jesus Christ will be anointed king here soon when it comes to this point in Revelation. If you look down at chapter 9... Okay, chapter 9, verse 5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. So we know we're at least 5 months from the end for that one. But we're at the end.
But that is right, that the trumpet cycle is the 7th seal cycle?
The 7th seal is the 7 trumpets.
Okay.
It still, I think, moves backwards a little bit, I think. But it's hard, it's hard to tell where everything, because it does really talk about the end. And then it comes back.
I was wondering, is it more that way? I guess.
Yeah, it comes back. I'll show you in just a minute. Okay. Matter of fact, I'll leave this up here because we're about to cover that. Any other questions? Okay. And another angel came and stood on the altar. But I think this is the same altar as the 5th seal. Remember the 5th seal. Do you want to go back? Let's go ahead and look back at the 5th seal as just a reminder. Where's the 5th seal? We'll go back here to... I'm at the wrong chapter. Okay, verse 9. I'm sorry, chapter 6, verse 9. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw unto the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God. So the same altar. And for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood of them who dwell on the earth? And white robes are given everybody. Now remember, this is also in chapter 7. And it says, remember in in verse 13, And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence cometh they? John didn't know. They are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes. So the saved people will get saved during the tribulation. They will get martyred. They will get killed. And those same people, when it comes to heaven, are somehow different than we are. I don't know how, but their souls are under the altar, and they're praying for redemption. And that's going to come back in a minute. All right. So it's the same altar as the 5th seal. Having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense. So what a censer is, it's which I'm sure you know, it has somewhat of a pot, like in your house. Maybe you have a candle that's under wax or potpourri of some sort, something you have in your house that makes it smell nice, whatever you ladies have. And so it's got something burning, and it's got something that creates an odor, incense, whatever the case, and it's hung, it's encapsulated, hung by a chain, and usually carried with a stick. And so having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. Now here, so the incense is going to be offered with the prayers of the saints. Now the prayers of the saints here, there's no question what it is. It's not just you praying. It's talking about the souls under the altar that have just prayed for vengeance. Jesus, when are you going to do something about this? Well, now it's coming. Now he's about to do something. Now, life on earth is going to get very uncomfortable for the people that are here. And, certainly not something we want. And anyways. And look here at verse 4. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. So our prayers are remembered in heaven by God himself. But more specifically, the prayers of the saints under the altar. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. So, now, remember, let's refer back up to this thing behind my head. So, remember, every time, see down here? Cycles end with the fall of Babylon, earthquakes, voices, hail, lightnings, and the wrath of God at Christ's return. I also gave out, I have more of them if you ever want them, but so remember that marks the end of a cycle. So to answer your question, the seventh seal happens, this thing, the incense, the prayer comes up, but yet now we're at the end. So now nothing happened. So that's what tells us that the seven trumpets are the seventh seal. So now we're going to back up a little bit. And when we do, certain things are going to happen. All right. So now we have the official start of the trumpet cycle. Remember, not all the earthquakes in Revelation are different earthquakes. It's a mark of, most of the time, the same earthquake. So that's how we know that it comes back. All right, verse 6. All right, so the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. So these are the seven angels from verse 2. So the first trumpet, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. I believe this is literal and not figurative or symbolic. There'll be literal fire, literal hail, mingled with blood falling from the sky. And they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. So each of the four plagues here hurt a third of what they're aimed at. When we get down to verses 8 and 9, 10 through 11, and verse 12. Each of them aim at a third. Which will have us doing some math here in a minute. Which, by the way, this looks close to the seventh plague in Exodus chapter 9. And we're going to answer a question from Becca from a few weeks ago. Go back to Exodus chapter 9, verse 13, if you would, please. So we have the 10 plagues exacted on Egypt from God. The question was asked by Becca, if those who are saved, or maybe Israel, whoever the case might be protected from these things. I don't have a solid answer for that. However, we do find that we go back to Exodus chapter 9 and look at verses 13 through 26. Read this kind of quickly if you don't mind. And the Lord said to Moses, "Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me." Verse 18. "Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as hath not been in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Send therefore now and gather thy cattle and all that thou hast in the field, for upon every man and beast which shall be found in the field, and shall not be brought home, the hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. He that feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his cattle flee into the houses. And he that regarded not the word of the Lord left his servants and his cattle in the field. And the Lord said to Moses, Stretch forth thine hand towards heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man, upon beast, upon every herb of the field, throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and a hail, and the fire ran upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. And there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like in the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb of the field and brake every tree of the field. Now notice in verse 26, only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. Now that does not necessarily tell us that the things that are happening in Revelation will not happen in Israel. Because remember, Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not, run. Because remember, Armageddon is going to be a localized geographical event. So if they're there, they're being disobedient at this point. You're not supposed to be in Israel at this point. You're supposed to have fled. But, however, there seems to be some sort of indication. Now, when we get later on, and it talks about the demon locusts in the next chapter, remember, it's given them to hurt all men except for those that were sealed in their foreheads, which we read about last week in Revelation chapter 7. The seal in the forehead gave them protection from that. So, all right, let's go with the second trumpet. And the second angel sounded, Revelation 8:8. And it was as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. So, is this an asteroid event? Is this a comet? Is it, Tunguska? Is that how you pronounce it? A Tunguska event back in 1916. Over the Tunguska, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, Russia. There was a meteorite that exploded and leveled a lot of land. But it could be that this fire might be part of an eruption or a large item entering the Earth's atmosphere. But however, have you ever wondered why Jesus in Matthew 21:21 said this? Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. Could it be that one of the two witnesses, or one of the 144,000, they have a prayer meeting and it goes? Could it be? I'm not sure what happens, but man, that'd be cool. And the third part of the sea became blood. So, looks a lot like the first plague in Egypt when the Nile was turned to blood. Exodus chapter 7, verses 20 through 21. And I think one of the reasons that the blood is mentioned so often here is a reminder that Jesus' blood was shed for us, and the people on earth that are on earth right at this point had rejected it, and certainly not a good thing to do. And as for the seas, notice it says there, a third part of the sea. I don't know if it's entire sea of the entire planet. If it's talking about just the Mediterranean, it just says the sea. But if it's talking about all of them, that's fine. If it's talking about the Mediterranean, that's fine. Whatever it's talking about, whatever it is, I'm fine with it. Verse 9, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. Unlike the flood, it was the water creatures that made it. Now it's going to be a third of them that's going to die because a third of it will be turned to blood. And a third part of the ships were destroyed. You ever, you're watching movies and some airplane crashes, some boat crashes, there's some big shoot up somewhere. You think if you're watching this movie, if this were happening, we would hear about it in the news the next day. But here, imagine a third of all the ships in the ocean gone because the water turned to blood. So does that mean that I've never tried to float anything on blood? Did they lose their buoyancy? Did the iron interact with? I don't have an idea about any of those things. But however, so we have this whatever going into the ocean, and pretty significant event. So now let's look at the third trumpet. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Okay, now let's cover something right here. We know that it's not talking about a star like, from the Big Dipper. All of a sudden, one of those big stars hurling towards Earth, falling on it. That would never happen. I don't think there is such thing as a star that's smaller than the Earth. Matter of fact, if you took a little chunk of the sun, it is so heavy and dense that the Earth would fall to it. And when we even use the terms on Earth now, shooting star. You might go out, to the mountain tonight, and go up to the top and you see something fly across the sky. We all know it's not a shooting star. We all know that star didn't just start flying across the universe at, hundreds of times the speed of light from that distance. That would be millions times the speed of light. We know that didn't happen. And so, we know it happened, but our label is, it may be a little bit different. So don't look at the Bible here and just scoff it because it says a great star fell. But it says here, burning as it were a lamp or a torch, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. Now it's interesting. You look at Revelation 9:1. Let's just look over there real quick. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. So that star that fell from heaven was given a key. Revelation 12:9 says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Matter of fact, Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Matter of fact, Luke chapter 10, verse 18, Jesus said, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. So when it's talking about a star here falling to earth, it is not talking about a celestial body. It is talking, I believe, of an angel or a demon, but we'll have to decipher which one it is by keep on going forward. So notice also it has a name, Wormwood. But notice here it says then at the latter part of the verse, the third part of the waters became wormwood. I had to look this up. I am not a horticulturist. I am not a botanist. I don't even know what those two things are. I don't know if they have anything to do with herbs. Do they have anything to do with herbs, Angela? Okay, just check. But only rue is a bitter herb, a more bitter herb than wormwood. In large enough quantity, wormwood is bitter, intoxicating, and poisonous. It is interesting. I don't like to throw things into Revelation that aren't there. Like, for instance, when it talks about the demon locusts, when we read it, people then start talking about, well, you know what? That sounds a lot like a helicopter. Helicopters don't have hair like women, face of men. And it's funny, I taught that lesson one time, and when I got home, there was already an email waiting for me. Somebody sent me an email of a picture of a Cobra helicopter. I was in the Air Force. I'm familiar with what a Cobra helicopter is. And sent me this email with this picture. That thing, sure, what it talks about in Revelation, if you're John, isn't that what it sounds like? No. Hair of a woman, face of a man, and it could sting from its tail, and people were then smitten by this thing for 5 months and could not die. Yeah, there's no helicopter like that. And it sent it out of the bottomless pit. So here, some people have said, hey, is this nuclear fallout? I don't think so. I think it's exactly what it says it is. But however, remember, I do believe that there will be nuclear war sometime during the tribulation, but that's a Bible study for another time. So, by the way, here, Exodus 15, remember when they got to the waters of Marah, bitter, and when they put something in the water, it became drinkable. So it's the opposite of what's happened here. Just interesting point. So, small question here. Why do you think that God would give them bitter water to drink? See, here is the answer to the prayer from the saints under the altar, saying, when are you going to avenge our blood and get back at those people who have killed us and martyred us and mocked us? Now a third of the earth has to drink bitter water. When Jesus was on the cross, they gave him gall, which is pronounced actually cole, but anyways, it means gall or bile, that is, by analogy, poison, or an anodyne, which I'm sure Carrie knows what it's talking about. Wormwood, poppy, gall. It's interesting. You fed my son this while he was on the cross. Guess what I'm feeding you? And yes, I get it. It's different people, but these people have all rejected Christ. Matter of fact, Revelation chapter 16, verse 6 says this. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. tribulation isn't a time of, oh, we're so innocent here in this whole, we humans, we're so innocent. No, they've rejected the blood of Christ. They have counted the blood of Christ as nothing. And then all of a sudden, now it's come time, and no, it's payback time. And so, again, a lot of people are going to die during this. The fourth trumpet. Ready? We might have to hit chapter 9. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. Which is kind of interesting, because here in a minute, it's all going to be new anyways, right? There won't be any need for the sun or for the moon or for the stars. There won't be any need for the temple, because remember, Jesus will be the light of the new heaven and new earth. And anyway, so the fourth angel sounded, the third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the earth, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Now, if we read that, does that mean that it's covered for a third of the time, or a third of their power? And I'm not sure I have an answer for that. Is this really just from the smoke of everything's happening? Because if we say that, we're taking away from the verse. Because the Bible does say that the sun itself was smitten. It doesn't say that our atmosphere was smitten. However, it could be, like with the star falling, it could be being somewhat symbolic. Okay, I don't mean symbolic as in, we don't know what this is, but it could actually be the phraseology, like we'd say a shooting star. Maybe it is that just the atmosphere is so thick at this point from all the burning that's the wording they use. And that could be the case as well. I don't have a good answer either way. And verse 13, back in World War II, we developed dive bombers. Oh, wait, I think it was the Germans actually that did these certain dive bombers. And these dive bombers were affixed with a whistle or a siren of some sort. When you then hear in the war movies, you hear the... What that is these airplanes were affixed with these whistles that when they dove, you knew it was coming. It not only is a bomb coming, but you have the extra terror of a whistle. You hear it coming, you know it's coming, and so you're on edge, and it's just really an added form of terrorism. And so what we're going to have here is we have an angel that's about to come by and say, listen, you ain't seen nothing yet. There is going to be such terror on the earth. Matter of fact, an angel is going to be flying through the atmosphere and saying, hey, you think this is bad? Wait till you see what's coming up next. Look at verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, the third part, we just read that. Verse 13. And I beheld and heard an angel fly through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe. Which, by the way, there are 3 woes, and we're going to be getting to those. To the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels, which are yet to sound. So we've had these things happening, and this angel saying, listen, that's nothing. Wait till you see what's coming up next. You crucified the Son of God. You think you can get away with it? And so here then comes even further judgment. The 3 woes correspond to the last 3 trumpets, by the way. Revelation 9:12, 1 woe is past. Behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. Then Revelation 11:14, the second woe is past. And behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right, we are 15 minutes early. So I'm going to have to go to chapter 9 and do it by memory. Is that okay? I don't have my notes on chapter 9 with me. What was that? Jarrett, you're not okay with that? You want to be done early?
I have a couple questions.
Oh, ask away.
So there's a reason for the wormwood, like a background reason, there seems like there's a reason for everything. Do you know what the reason is for the blood mingled and for the blood turning, like the water turning into blood?
Well, didn't I say that about, because I think it references a reminder of the shed blood of Jesus. I think that's what it's referenced to.
Okay.
I could be making a connection that's not there too, but I don't know if people are going to get the irony while they're on the earth cussing God and trying to run from the fire and run from the hail. Yes, Clay, it's your first Wednesday night question.
Do you think that anyone would survive through the tribulation?
Yes. Okay. So Remember I said earlier, Clay, I'll bring you up to speed a little bit. And when I say that, just because you've only been here for, what, a month now? So when Matthew, do you have your Bible with you? Should we go backwards and just talk about this? Yeah. Let's go to Matthew 24. Okay, so again, we use terms. When we refer to the whole 7-year period as the tribulation, we all know what we're talking about. If we want to be more specific, we would call the first 3.5 years, we would call the beginning of sorrows, and the second half, 3.5, called the Great Tribulation. That comes from Matthew 24:21. But notice here in verse 3, as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So the things that are coming in chapter 24 and 25 are the signs of not the rapture. They're signs of the second coming and the end. So we have the rapture, and then 7 years later we have the end. We have the second coming. We have Armageddon. And so as we read through here, notice here in verse 13, But he that endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Now, in context, what this is talking about is people who survive the tribulation. And when it's talking about surviving the tribulation, it's not talking about a spiritual salvation. It's talking about a physical one. See, people are going to live through the tribulation. People are going to live through Armageddon, because Armageddon is only localized around Megiddo, around Judea, around that area. So people that are outside of that. Now, granted, billions of people are going to die during the tribulation. Matter of fact, we'll do the math on the next one. Because right now we're, 7 billion? And so a third just died, or about to die here in a minute. That takes us down to a certain number. I have the math of what numbers that brings us down to. But that doesn't also account for Christians being gone. But so when it says the same shall be saved, those people will be the ones that get to repopulate the planet during the millennium, 1,000-year reign of Christ. Oh, let's go back over here. And so what happens is the people who live through all this, what we're talking about right now, and live through Armageddon, get to come over here during the millennium. When the Bible says that we shall rule and reign with Christ, it's talking about us ruling and reign with Christ in a position of authority. But if we're all perfect and all sinless, what do we need to rule over? And so what we're ruling over is over the people who have survived the tribulation and passed the sheep and goat nation judgment. That's time for another time. And so they're over here. Remember the battle of Gog and Magog here at the end of the end of the millennium is one more war. It's not going to be Christians rising up because we're in heaven. We're perfect. We're on earth, but perfect. And so the battle of Gog and Magog is the offspring of the people who lived through the tribulation, just 1,000 years later. And so to prove this a little further, see there in verse 13, the same shall be saved. Look at verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And we just read a little bit about it today. We're going to learn a lot more about it the next 2 weeks too. Now watch this in verse 22. Answers your question perfectly, Clay. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So notice that in verse 22. When I have in my Bible, I have that word saved in verse 22 underlined, with a line down to verses 13, saved, underlined. So when it's talking about salvation here, it is not talking about a spiritual salvation. It's not talking about being saved, trusting Christ your Savior, believing the gospel. It's talking about they'll actually live through the tribulation. Yes?
So the people that make it through the tribulation will still be cast into the lake of fire?
No.
So then what happens to them?
So if they survive the tribulation, so notice the Sarah says days shall be shortened, but there still has to be 1,260 of them, which you see right here. That's still Bible. So I believe their days are just going to go quicker. So when people survive, we're going to have a certain percentage of people on the planet that die. First, we're going to have the rapture. That'll take care of getting a lot of people out. We're going to have a third of the people dying here in a minute. in the next chapter. We're going to have a bunch of other people dying. We have the Christians being martyred during the tribulation. It's possible the 144,000 are martyred as well. I'm not sure. I think they are. So all those people are going to die. And so here's the part that people get confused on. Okay, I am still answering your question. Okay? Let's go over here in verse 30. In chapter 24, verse 30. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the man coming in the Son of Man coming in the clouds in heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, and from one end of the heaven to the other. And so what people get confused about here from chapter 24 is they think that there's great tribulation and that this is talking about the rapture. But it isn't. There's actually a gleaning of the saved at the end of the tribulation, and that is what we have right here. You see that on the screen, the gleanings? And so what this is talking about, all the saved of the planet, I believe during the tribulation are going to be raptured out. Now, we're already raptured out at the beginning. There's going to be another one towards the end. They're going to be raptured out. And so there will not be one lost person on the planet for Christ's return. There will not be one lost person on the planet for Armageddon. Does that make sense to you so far?
So are you saying that everyone that makes it through the tribulation will go to heaven?
No, I haven't gotten there yet. Okay, so everybody who's on the planet, what did you just say?
So the saved people that made it, that got saved during the tribulation,
Yes.
that's what that rapture is.
Yes. Did that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay. So, now to fully answer your question, I think. And so then, Armageddon's going to happen. People believe that Armageddon's a nuclear war. It isn't. It's Christ returning, and He's going to speak, and the armies of Satan are just going to basically be done. That's where the blood of their blood flows through, down like a river up to the horse's bridle, because the armies have converged on Israel and will be destroyed at once, and they will all die. So Armageddon is just a localized event. It is not the whole world. It is not nuclear war. If you aren't in that general area, then you will survive physically. Okay, so do you follow me so far? Okay, here's where it gets hairy. Not hairy. Is he going to catch this if I talk about the sheep and goats?
That's pretty bright.
All right, Clay, you ready? Okay. Let's go to chapter 25 and verse 31. And if you have further questions on this, we have 10 minutes. Matter of fact, we can take more than that if we need to. We just need to let Joe know. Okay, so Clay, do works get us to heaven? If I feed poor people, it'll get me to heaven? No, it's only through Jesus Christ, right? Works do not save anybody. We got that down. So look at verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in His glory, and all the angels with Him, then shall He sit on the throne of His glory, and before Him shall be gathered all nations, and He shall separate the one from another, as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats. And He shall set the sheep on His right hand, and the goats on His left. Then shall the King say unto them on His right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was a hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. And remember, those things don't get us to heaven. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer Him, saying, Lord, when we see these things? And verse 40. And the King shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren. Who's Jesus' brethren, Clay? The Jews, right? We as Christians are not Christ's brothers. We are the sons of God. So what it's talking about here, you ready? So at the end of the tribulation, there's going to be the gleanings, which we can take more time to prove. So all the people that are left on earth are unsaved, right? If we have gleanings. So Armageddon happens. Christ comes. There's a 75-day cleanup, which we can cover a different time. And then there's going to be this judgment. And so what happens is all of the unsaved of the planet are before God. Everybody's unsaved. So the ones that took care of Israel during the tribulation, Revelation chapter 12 talks about how the earth swallowed the onslaught of Satan and protected Israel. So let's use Syria. Let's say Syria was good to the Jews and took them in when they fled like they're supposed to. They would be one of these sheep nations. They fed, they clothed, they did all these things for the Jews. Let's use Turkey as an example. Turkey did not take in Jews. They killed them right along with everybody else. They treated them badly. They did not feed them. They did not clothe them. They expelled them out and pushed them off into other country. They would be what's next here in verse 41. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was a-hungered, and he gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and he gave me no drink, and all those things. And verse 44, when did we see these things? Verse 45, Then shall he answer them, say, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not unto me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. So, Clay, everybody on the planet is unsaved at this point, right? So the sheep nations, let's use Syria, who took in the Jews, we don't know if Syria is going to take in the Jews. All Syrians at that point then will be allowed to walk into the millennium and repopulate the planet. The people that are from Turkey who were bad to the Jews and didn't take them in during the tribulation, they will die. Where does an unsaved person go when they die? Hell. So everybody, if God looked at everybody on the planet and said, you're dead now, everybody would go to hell because there's no saved people on the planet. However, God's giving a second chance to these people who took in the Jews during the tribulation. So the people who do survive, when it talks about he endureth unto the end shall be saved, is talking then about the people that live, they shall be saved, but it doesn't mean a spiritual salvation. It's talking about a physical salvation. They get to walk in the millennium, repopulate the planet, and those people's offsprings are going to be the one that perpetuate the battle of Gog and Magog later, while we rule and reign over them as in our perfect heavenly bodies.
So do they get saved?
I think they have a chance to. I have never had a good answer on salvation during the millennium. Clay, did you catch even 3/4 of that? All right, we're not going to hit chapter 9. Now let's preview chapter 9. Unless somebody's in a hurry to get out. Let's read about these demon locusts. See if they're helicopters. All right, we're still going to study this next week. We're just going to read it. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and to him was given a key to the bottomless pit. So, to basically hell. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, and as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. And so just like last summer, imagine that a lot worse with all the air that just kind of surrounds you. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. So let's see. Do helicopters come out of hell? No. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which were not sealed of God in their foreheads. And those are the ones from chapter 7, the 144,000. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. Any of you ever been stung by a scorpion? I have in my notes, because I did study it, but it talked about, I went to WebMD and saw the different things that happened. I'm going to die. And what happens when you're bit by a scorpion. And these people live like this for 5 months. But yet you say, when we say live like this, they're going to be convulsing and in pain for 5 months. And by the way, they're going to try to kill themselves. And they can't do it. Matter of fact, that's in verse 6. In those days shall men seek death and shall not find it. They shall desire to die, and death shall flee them. So they're going to shoot themselves. They are still going to live. They're going to poison themselves. They're just going to have to live with the effects of that poison for the endurance of the rest of the tribulation. Imagine that. Cannot die. All right, let's look at verse. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And so, by the way, that's where people get hung up. The side of a Cobra helicopter has a shark, and it has sharp teeth. And they had breastplates, and those breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Oh, you ever hear a helicopter fly over? Yeah, but I've never seen one with flowing hair. They had their tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. What?
Get caught in the propeller.
You get caught in the propeller.
No, the hair is the
Ooh. And then they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name when the Hebrew tongue was Abaddon, and the Greek tongue hath the name Apollyon, which, by the way, Greek and Hebrew together. Who else in the Bible had a name that was both Greek and Hebrew? Don't answer that question. Oh, no? Judas Iscariot. Greek, Hebrew. Anyways, and we'll cover that more. Anyways. And then if those are helicopters, then we get down to the next one, and they're horses with, demon tails. And what do you? Well, the first one's helicopters. What are the next ones? Yeah, it's just people get kind of silly on this whole thing. But looking at verse 20, look at verse 20. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, and they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. I'm going to talk about a bunch of rebellious, hard-headed people. Any questions? We're still going to cover chapter 9 next week. What?
I think some of that is like in China and Japan, or not Japan, but like China and different things where they like worship Buddha and stuff like that. Like, do you think part
Oh,
of
no. Notice it said there are things of metal and things that can't talk, things that are worshipped. I think it's talking about, us worshiping stuff. It's kind of like the article that we, about sports being the modern day Baal. Things are worshipped. Things are put before God. And, I think that's what it's talking about. But, of course, actually during the tribulation, remember there's going to be an image that's going to be, speak. Maybe there'll be little trinkets of that image.